On this beautiful Sunday night, we are coming to you live from our Nile Serena studios. This is Perspective with Josephine Karunji.
A very good evening, and thank you once again for making the time to join us this Sunday evening. Good evening to my lovely studio audience. Thank you for coming. Okay, well, tonight we know that in 2015, Uganda was named the most entrepreneurial country, and sadly, we know that by the fifth, most of our businesses, most of the people that start businesses in Uganda, those businesses never get to see their fifth birthday. Why, you may ask? Mostly because of taxation, and mostly because most of them choose to remain informal because they want to avoid paying taxes and also registering. Well, tonight we're going to delve into that topic of taxation. Join me and let's welcome the people that will be sharing the stage with me this evening. Please have your seats. I'd like to welcome my studio guests for this evening, and I'll start with a lady from PricewaterhouseCoopers, Pamela Nantamba. And as Pamela makes her way, I'd also like to welcome an entrepreneur who is Christine Sechitoleko. She'll be joining us as well. And the third lady that will be joining us this evening is Sandra Rese, who is the director of G&H Tourism Advisory Group. And she's a consultant, yes. Thank you very much, ladies, for taking the time to come and school us on matters taxation or on your experiences in this particular field. Well, let's begin with our segment that is called This and That. Right, so as we start, the last two Sundays we've been talking about money, and I'd like to ask you each a question. Well, you can choose one of the two questions, and my two questions are, the first one is to think of two childhood memories about money. What did those memories teach you? What kind of relationship did they give you about money, with the way you're dealing with money, either you're spending or you're saving? And my second question will be, if you were to unwind the years, what would you do different with regards to the savings culture for yourself and for your family? You can pick one of the two questions, and I'll take whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I'll go first. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me here.
Yes. Kristen.
Yeah, I would like to maybe pinpoint some memories as a child about money. In S2, I had just done home economics. We're coming from a large family, and I needed a little bit more pocket money, so I felt like I had to do something. So we just learned how to bake. So I decided to bake in my father's house using his ingredients and take them to a friend who had a shop down the road. So for me, it taught me that I have to always be to take an initiative if I needed a little extra cash in my pocket.
Christine, are you a baker?
I'm not a baker. I'm not a baker, but I have a passion. I have a passion for baking.
Okay.
I bake at home. I guess it's from that time.
Did you ever make money from it?
I made money, but in hindsight, I did not factor in all the costs. I actually used all my father's ingredients, so I never ever bought, my mother's ingredients. I never ever bought the flour or the baking or the Blue Band. I used everything in the kitchen. So, in my view, as a child, I definitely made money.
Well, no one was taxing you then.
Exactly.
So we'll let you get on with it.
Yes.
Yes, Pamela.
Yes, I'll talk about the latter question in terms of what I would do differently if I had to rewind the clock. And that would be to change my saving culture. I started saving way into my employment. I am employed. And it took me, a couple of years into my employment to actually start doing disciplined saving. And for me, that is something that I would really change in terms of being able to put aside money, do something outside of my employment that increases my source of income. And much as I've now done it, I think I would have done better in terms of starting much earlier.
What triggered the need to make that change?
It was one of those moments where you're just thinking, how many years have I been working what have I done with my money?
What do I have to show for it?
What do I have to show for it? And of course, realizing the fact that I'm not growing any younger, so there are responsibilities ahead of me. There are things to accomplish if I get to a certain age, probably. So I had to do something differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sandra.
Yes.
Which of the two questions?
The
do you want
second,
to pick? Okay.
because I want to pick up on what Pamela said. We tend to postpone saving seriously for our, retirement years. If I was to rewind the clock, I would begin saving at 25, because by 25 you're finished more or less your college education and getting into your first year or second year of employment. And I said, and I actually was calculating as I was waiting in the car to come on the show, if I saved $100 a month since I was 25, right now I would have $21,000 US in my possession.
But Sandra, you look like you're 25. So
I'm not. So I cannot, of course, get back the time that has gone, but I now, financially looking back, I should have begun saving. I think my focus more was on assets, investing in assets like land and so on. I wasn't really thinking of putting a monthly set amount to contribute towards my 50s and beyond.
Okay, but isn't it then better to, then you said your focus was on land and things like that. Wouldn't you rather have the land, which you can then sell at a certain point? I'm sure someone is thinking of that.
I can, but I could
Then
have
put the money in
afforded.
a bank
I could have afforded $100 a month. That was not outside of my reach. It was
Okay.
possible. I just didn't do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Sandra is the director of G&H Tourism, and she's an advisory consultant. And Pamela, I hope I mentioned that earlier, works with PricewaterhouseCoopers. And we have, of course, Christine Fetcheleko, who is an entrepreneur. These are the ladies that are going to join me as we get into our next segment, which is Say It As It Is, concerning taxation, and we'll be doing that in just a couple of seconds. So my first question to you ladies, and any of you can start off, do you pay taxes
Yes.
in your whichever field you're in? Yes, you pay taxes.
Yeah,
which,
sure.
which taxes do you pay?
Well, I am an employee of
Yeah.
PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I do pay taxes on my employment income in form of pay as you earn.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Kristen?
Yeah, I pay taxes. Currently, I'm just trying to set up a new business in paper packaging. So I imported some machines and raw materials. So yes, I pay taxes in terms of income tax and excise duty and all that. So yes.
What's
I pay
that been
taxes.
like for you?
It's been tough. It's been challenging because some of the equipment was not cheap, and there's a certain threshold that you need to import the taxes. While I may feel that that threshold is high enough, Revenue Authority sometimes doesn't feel that that threshold is high enough to have exemption, especially on VAT. So I feel that it's been stressful. The process is clear, but your imagination of, the thresholds. If I'm bringing a machine, say, for me, if I'm bringing a machine of $20,000, in my head, I'm assuming really this is a lot of money, and Revenue Authority should be able to exempt me on withholding tax because I'm not yet producing anything. But it so happens that that is not the situation. So, it's quite a bit of money, especially when you're starting a business, to be able, because revenue will tell you that that money is held for you to discount when you start selling the goods. But it takes a while from the time you set up a business to actually start selling the goods. No, not even profit, to actually, setting up the machines, because most times you're getting somebody from abroad to set up the machines, the market has to respond. So it actually takes time for you to be able to start making returns whereby, your VAT that you paid initially can be offset.
Okay.
So.
Sandra?
Yes, I do. I pay corporate tax, I pay income tax, and starting July this year, we're paying VAT on a monthly basis. So I, like she said, don't have the threshold yet to go into VAT, but I have a few deals that I have in the pipeline, and I'm sure that I will be able, to increase my capital base, and then we'll begin the VAT itself. So yes, I do pay taxes, and I have been paying taxes from the onset of launching my company.
You have been?
Yes.
When both of you speak about threshold, what do you mean for somebody who is wondering what's that?
Sometimes it's not clear because from the way I understand it, when you bring a certain value of machines, sometimes Revenue Authority can be able to tell you, okay, in this case, we will exempt you from paying VAT. So the threshold is like maybe it might be like 30, but it seems like there is no. It's on a case-to-case basis. That is what I was meant to understand. So the threshold is not set whereby I know if my machines are 20,000, then I'm exempt. It seems like it's not a straightforward. That is how, the challenge I found.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, luckily enough, we have a gentleman who is going to come from URA to clear that air for
yes.
you and for all of us as well. But Pamela, do you think that we've been explained to enough about what taxation is and why we shouldn't? Because I asked one of my workmates this evening if he knew how much he pays in taxes, pay as you earn, and he said, I don't know, I don't want to know, because if I know, I'll get angry. I don't know what that money does, where it goes, so I don't want to look at it. Do you think we understand what it is for? Do you think we understand why we should pay it, why we should comply?
Okay. The URA and the government in general have put in place initiatives to try and sensitize the public and the taxpayers in terms of what sort of taxes should be paid. And you just mentioned the gentleman from the URA will be coming, so they will expound. But from my experience and in terms of my interaction with the URA, if you go, for example, to their website, you'll find a lot of information there. There have been forums that have been organized by the URA that are actually focused on business people to sensitize them.
Yeah.
So there's been some work that's being done, and the URA has been deliberate about that, at least over the past, I should say, maybe 5 or so years. That said, I think there's still room for more sensitization, because I still meet a couple of people in my practice as a tax practitioner who don't understand what taxes are all about. I still meet people who ask, the questions that you would think are simple.
That you would think are
yes,
simple.
that I would think are
Yes.
simple, but they actually don't understand it. So I do think that the URA should do a bit more work in terms of reaching out to the small taxpayers, reaching out to the smaller businesses most especially, because the people who are playing in the large sector will have maybe the information, they have the background in terms of they're trained in accounting, they're trained in taxation.
But now that we have you here, what are taxes all about?
Okay, taxes, I would say it's everybody who earns income pays tax. Everybody who consumes, be it household items, be it those of us who drive, walk into a supermarket and you want to pick up anything, you will pay taxes. So there are a number of taxes that are paid, but there are direct taxes, those that are on your income that you earn, and then there's consumption taxes, which are paid through the consumption process.
So at what point do I start paying taxes? If, for example, let's look at pay as you earn.
Yes.
Is there an amount that I can earn that won't be taxed? What is the least of amount of money that I can earn that won't be taxed?
Oh, yes. There's a threshold, or maybe I should go away from that one.
Yes.
There is a minimum amount
yes.
below which you're not taxed, and that is 235,000 Uganda shillings per month.
That's
so
new,
if you
right?
earn, that has been in place since I think 2015.
Yes.
Thereabouts,
okay.
or 14. And so if you earn below 235,000, then you don't pay tax. Anything above that, you're required to pay tax.
So it's percentage by percentage, depending on the amounts.
Yes, that's basically for individual income, personal income that I earn as an individual. So if then it's incremental. If I earn 500,000, I'm not going to pay the same tax as somebody who earns 1 million shillings, and I won't pay the same tax as somebody probably who earns more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the ladies who are doing business, did you plan for taxes when you were going to start your businesses? Did you know that when I start this business, I'm going to have to think about this and this tax? I'm going to have to deal with URA.
Yes, I think so. I mean, by the time I started business, I was, I'm a pharmacist by profession, by the way, so I ran a pharmaceutical business, but I stopped running this pharmacy business in 2006. But I knew from the beginning, because by then, Revenue Authority was already in the picture. You couldn't miss them.
They were calling you and speaking to you.
No, they were not calling me, but I just thought it was the responsible thing to do. But I also heard of people who had gotten into scraps with Revenue Authority. So for me, I was being proactive. I'm like, let me confront this thing before it confronts me. So that is, you know, what I did. I made sure that at the time it wasn't so bad, the registration, you know, it wasn't very strict, the registration. But I knew after 2 years of being in business, I knew that I had to file tax returns. And then also I found that if I wanted my business to grow, if I needed to supply government organizations or certain companies, I needed a tax clearance certificate, and the only way you can get a tax clearance certificate is if you have a file in Revenue Authority. So for me, it was always that, yes, I have to pay taxes. I didn't agree sometimes, but I knew I had to pay. And one of the things that I did to institute that was to make myself a little financial literate. You know, I got somebody to just give me some basic information, you know, on the finances when they
Somebody from where?
An accounting friend, actually. Okay. An accounting friend.
So and like Pamela would be your accounting friend now?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, it was somebody who wasn't going to charge me money. You know, they printed out a dummy balance sheet and told me this is this, this and this. But also the other thing that I did was being proactive is I installed the software immediately. You know, there are so many basic softwares in the market. I installed a software that was very basic, and it helped me because...
What kind of software is this? What are you saying when you say software?
Like using, because let's say at the time it was pharmacy business. So we had stocks to deal with and all that. So making sure that everything in the business was recorded, how much stock I bought, how much I sold for, you know, who was I paying, what was I paying for. So all that information was actually in a language that I could understand. You know, these days you get all sorts of complicated softwares, but they are basic ones for startup businesses. Okay. And for me, that is something that really helped me. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's take a short break, but we're coming back to this discussion with a gentleman from URA who is going to give us a bit more information and teach us how to not evade the taxes, but why we should pay those taxes. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are watching Perspective with Josephine Karungi, and we've been joined in right here by Jamil Senyonjo, who is the manager of domestic taxes for Kampala North.
Kampala South.
Kampala South with URA. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
I am humbled by the invitation.
You're the only gentleman among ladies, but we welcome you.
Thank you.
Well, this is a general question now for all of you. What good is us paying taxes supposed to do? I'm sure some of you have traveled and you've seen what it's done in different places. What should our taxes be doing?
Personally, I've had the privilege of living in a country that has like the highest facilities in terms of access. Roads, public transport, health, and education. For me, if the government could just fix those things, public transport, infrastructure as far as roads are concerned, health and education, I would be happy.
So that's what our taxes should,
yes,
some of the things.
Yes,
okay,
and that's what I've seen happening in the developed world.
And security.
And security,
and
yes.
Security.
Considering
security,
the week we've had, yes,
yes,
security
that
as
is
well.
true, and security.
Yes, Pamela.
Yes, I totally agree with what she's saying, because government gets revenue in form of taxes and also, you know, in form of other non-tax revenue, whether it's donations or other things. And it's that revenue that they use to finance public expenditure. And all the things that she's talking about are really part of public expenditure. Even when we talk of salaries for civil servants, when we talk of, you know, schools, the health sector, that's all part of what government should be doing with the money.
With the taxes.
Yeah.
With our money.
Yes.
Well, there's this thought that the people who pay the most taxes are the very people who take their children to private schools, They would use private roads if it was possible. They go to private hospitals. Why is that? Do you think?
I think it's because of the fact that the government facilities, which are supposed to be financed by the government, are actually lacking in the basic services. So you find that, you know, the schools that are public schools where you would want to take your child, you pay taxes, is really giving the people who are getting the lowest marks in, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, also for health, if you go to Mlagwa and you're looking for an aspirin, you probably, you know, if you go to Mlagwa and you're looking for an X-ray machine or a cancer screening machine, you know, those facilities are generally not well maintained or are not working. So you find those people, since they have the money, it's
they
unfair.
Can afford to
they
get
can afford,
the service
yes,
quicker
but
and, you know.
ideally they should be able to access.
Oh, Jamil, I have a question for you. Are there any smart tax plans that you can give us so that we know better how to deal with the whole process?
First of all, I want to register the valid observations of accountability. And I must say that we still have a challenge for accountability. And however, this is not to say that nothing has been done. You realize that Kampala-Mbarara Road has been worked on, Kampala-Gulu Road has been worked on, Kampala-Hoima Road has been worked on, just to mention a few. But still we have a lot to do in terms of telling the people how their taxes have been used. And then in terms of tax planning, Uganda is one such a country that continues to collect withholding tax. You know, withholding tax is
I don't know if the ladies can hear you. You're very...
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, Uganda is one such a country that continues to collect withholding tax. Actually, withholding tax is a primitive method of collecting income tax.
What is withholding tax?
Withholding tax is a method of collecting income tax. So it is collected on the non-compliant taxpayers. When you prove some degree of compliance, then you are exempted from that tax. So when you hear the importers here saying that, look, we import goods, they charge us withholding tax. Some are actually not charged withholding tax. So it begins with you to step up your compliance. When, for example, you get a TIN, you file your returns on time, you pay your taxes on time, you apply for withholding tax exemption, and you'll be granted. Besides, even new employees, I believe, Josephine, you drive, do you?
Yes.
I also believe you imported a car one time in your name. On mere presentation of an appointment letter from NTV, we refunded that withholding tax that you have, that you paid URA. So tax planning is essential in doing business. You may wish to look at issues like the nature of business. Are you going to register as a sole proprietor or a company? For example, if you are running rentals and you register as an individual, you will be given 20% as assumed expenses, then 2,820,000 shillings as like the tax-free money, and the balance is subject to 20%. But if you registered as a company, for example, a company is given all the expenses that it incurs. So it's better off to register your business as a company as opposed to a sole proprietor business.
Yes. Well, somebody is asking, is it possible to allow taxpayers to enter their TIN number and track their remitted taxes?
Certainly, yes. And when you apply for a tax clearance certificate, we run your profile and even a ledger to know what you returned and what you've paid, and then the amount due. If there is any amount due, we actually ask you to pay. If you overpaid, we actually ask you to ask for a refund, and we refund the money.
Okay. Do you give out statements for individual taxpayers?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Well, I'd like to ask a question of the audience. Do you have any questions that you'd like to put to? Okay. Yes. That was quick.
Okay. Thank you, Josephine. My question goes to the gentleman. It's actually on the value-added tax, because according to my understanding, I think it's like it goes up to the last consumer, meaning that even a baby class child, yeah, pays that value-added tax if he goes and buys pancake. Yeah.
Okay, let's take another question.
Thank you very much, Josephine. My question is, at what point does URA believe that you as a taxpayer are withholding tax compliant in order to give you the exemption?
Okay, we'll take those.
The first one, VAT is actually a consumption tax. The businessmen that we register are actually not the taxpayers for VAT. They only help us to collect VAT. As they collect, we actually give them back the input tax that they may suffer in the process of doing business. The target is actually the consumer. I believe you must have been very young around 1996. This is what we used to call sales tax and commercial transaction levy. This tax came to replace CTL and sales tax. It is largely a consumption tax. So the VAT trail targets the final consumer. So when the consumer pays, then we refund these middlemen. They get a relief. That is why, actually, it is very unfair for a businessman to collect this money from you and then fail to remit it to us. So when
how do you track this and actually deal with?
VAT tends to be a self-policing tax. For example, we know these goods come into the country. When they come into the country, we know the stock that has come in. We know the stock that you will have, say, at the end of month. We can work backwards and really establish that whether there is an under declaration or not.
Okay.
Then the second question was?
Sorry, I just wanted to make a comment on the VAT question that you made. That in addition to what Jamil has said, the structure is also, what the government has done is for certain basic commodities that they consider important for the household and for the economy, the exemptions that do exist. So you will find that on certain items of consumption, there's no VAT.
Okay.
And so much as you're the ultimate consumer, then you don't incur the VAT because they understand the necessity of that product.
Oh, actually, I must comment again. Last evening, I think I had this Nanduto's program.
Yes.
Sanitary towels. They should exempt tax on sanitary towels. I heard that. Actually, when you read the VAT Act, the zero-rated schedule, there is no tax on sanitary towels.
So how is it that these things actually happen and we are silent about them, and you people who know?
That is why I'm actually humbled by being here. I'm here to tell you.
Okay, do we have another question?
The other question was
The
about?
withholding tax.
The withholding tax.
As you think on that question, let's take your question as well.
Okay, my question is, why don't you guys exempt taxi from those people who are new in the business? For example, someone starts a business 1 week, then the other week they come like, you have to pay the income tax before even getting profits.
Okay.
Oh. Thank you.
So you could start with the other one on the withholding tax.
Withholding tax.
Yes.
I told you withholding tax is collected from the non-compliant taxpayers. Once you prove that you have actually submitted your returns and maybe you don't have anything to pay, for 1 or 2 years, you actually ask for a withholding tax exemption, and it will be granted. And then the other question is about, again, what?
Would you like to repeat your question? She's saying you haven't made any profit. You've just started your business 1 week, and the next week they are knocking on your door.
Okay. To begin with, for small taxpayers, if your turnover is 10 million and below in a year, there is no tax to pay. Yeah.
Is
10 million.
that general information, or it's information?
I am giving you information.
Okay.
But because we actually don't have this information, we tend to estimate. Even when we estimate and you can prove that my turnover is below 10 million, other than the professionals, because this one does not include you, you people should submit returns. But if your turnover is below 10 millions, and even between 10 and 20 millions, you shouldn't pay anywhere beyond 150,000 shillings.
That's
A year.
Per year, for the year.
I'm talking about a year. Annual, yes. So now, we have even gone ahead to segment the areas, because you know the business in Kampala may not necessarily be the same business in MPG. So we tend to charge them differently, even when the turnover, the gross sales are the same. Then the other thing is that...
So it might be cheaper in one area than in another, in one district.
You know, considering the municipalities where they are, if you said it's a flat rate, you would be getting it wrong. In the past, we used to do that, and there were complaints that, look, much as I make this turnover, I don't get this money. So still it is on a higher side. And government looked into this and said, okay, we are going to charge you according to your area of operation.
Okay.
Then the second thing you should notice that you also need to know the direction of this government. The government would want to encourage exports. You find people with a lot of stock, which they could even take, say, to Sudan and benefit from the 18% relief, which is refunded. So why allow people to come and buy from your shop? Then they take the goods, say, to Sudan, Kenya, in Congo. You don't benefit from that 18% relief if you can actually do it.
Yes, sir.
It's a question of having the export entries, proving that goods went out, and then you're in business. So
I think for most of us, the question is the lack of information. So where do we get this information? And I'd like the ladies as well to say something to conclude this discussion, because our time is fast spent. Where do we get this information?
Information is available on our web portal, one. We have also printed several tax literature in different languages. Our numbers are on.
But where do I walk to?
You can walk to my office. You can walk to President Towers. You can walk to any of your nearest URA office.
I think one of the primary sources of tax information would be, if you like she said, relatives and family friends who, or people in accounting professions who can sit down with you one-on-one, because you do need one-on-one.
Yes.
Sometimes it's very heavy, especially if you don't come from a financial or accounting or audit background. Like myself, I'm not from those fields or sectors. So you need that one-on-one, which maybe URA might not.
Have you heard of the tax Katari? I think last 2 weeks we were in Masaka. We are moving shop by shop. By the time we leave that shop, we are sure the taxpayer knows his obligations.
And that's going around the country?
We intend to go around the country.
All right. Christine, last remarks from you.
Are there any obligations? You say the taxpayer knows his obligations. Are there any obligations that the URA has towards me, the taxpayer, that you informed? Because sometimes what I find is that in the past, Revenue Authority has had a reputation of confrontation. In the past, I'm not saying today, if you get a letter from Revenue Authority asking you a question, you don't want to hear. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges, that has been.
In the past, or is it the present as well,
the challenge
Jamil?
we have
And
is
very
that,
quickly.
because people don't want, are hesitant to declare their sources. I look at her and suspect she must be in tourism. Am I wrong?
You're right.
I look at this one and suspect you must be a pharmacist. You don't have to tell me this, but I use other measures to find out who you are. The most important question to answer now is, who are you? You tend to under-declare. You tell me here prima facie what you think you are doing, but hide at the back. So I cannot advise you correctly if you have not given me full
All the information. But if I give you all the information, then you're bound to also put me in a tight spot. Pamela, your final thoughts?
My final thoughts, I would want to comment on that question.
Yes.
And just say that information is power, because she mentioned the fact that URA gives you an assessment or a document and you're panicking, or sometimes you don't even know what to do. There is a service center, the URA office, at Crested Towers, for example, and many other service centers in the other offices.
Yes.
People should understand that these offices are open and you can walk in there and ask questions and seek to understand, because when you do that and the URA is knocking at your door with an assessment, going back to her question saying I'm paying tax before I make profits, you would be able to defend yourself, because you're able to say, look, this is what I'm doing, my records show I'm doing 1, 2, 3, and so there's no tax to pay here. But we don't have that information, or majority of the common person
doesn't
don't
know
have,
all of this. Well, thank you very much for all taking the
Probably
time. Our time is
the last
fast
one,
spent. Just
the
very
last
quickly.
One. Yeah. Even when we issue the assessment, you have a right to object to the assessment, as long as this assessment does not rhyme with your income.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jamil. Let's take a bit of a break. We'll be right back with our next segment, which is Speak and Play. I hold in my hand my brown envelope, and I'm prepared to give it to somebody who is willing to participate in this segment. Can I have 2 volunteers? Anybody who would like to carry home a brown envelope? Can I have 2 volunteers who would like to carry something home with them? Yes? Yes? If you'd like to step right there at our perspective podium. And I hope you have a good view of the screen right there. So we're going to put a picture there. And if you have one chance, each of you, to tell me what that picture is. And no tips from this side. So can we have that picture on the screen? What is that? If we can freeze it right there. What is that picture? You can take it off now. I think they've seen quite a bit. You each have 2. No, okay, let me give you 2 chances. Each of you. Who would like to start? What was that? Do you want to play it again? Just play it for 2 seconds. If somebody at home wants to try. Okay, let's take it off. You both don't know? You can't try? Okay.
That looks like a clock for Interior Kaunga.
No. Okay, one more chance. We're not playing it again. You've seen it quite a bit. See, people want to answer. One more chance. Should I? That's it? That's it? Okay, so.
It's a coin.
What coin is that?
100 shillings.
You have to be able to tell me that. Let's have someone else trying. Yes, have your chance. No, quite. Somebody else wants to run up and try. You can just run up and try.
50 shilling, no? It's 50 shilling coin.
Well, let's see how correct you are, if you are correct at all. Can we have that playing on the screen? It's going very slowly. I feel like putting it together. Okay. You clearly know your money very well. There you go. You have won yourself 100,000 shillings. Please make sure you pick it before you go. All right. And that was our Pick and Play segment. Thank you for playing, ladies. Thank you for participating. And that's Perspective with Josephine Karunji for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you picked something about taxation from this segment. Have we picked something? Do we have it? Our questions have even a little bit been answered. I guess what needs to be said now is, where is our money going? And I'm hoping that we'll have somebody to speak about that in our next segment. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great week. This is Perspective with Josephine Karunji. Good night.